Understanding the technology that powers the money is essential. Knowing the business drivers that inspire how the money is made is crucial. Bridging the gap between the mind of the technologist and the mind of the business is monumental. That is what TBF is all about. Let's start this never-ending conversation. It's time.
Welcome. Happy Friday to another episode of the Tech Behind FinTech. I am your host, Nandi Oswagu. Joining me is Jeff Mahony. How are you doing today, Jeff?
I'm doing fantastic, and I can't express more appreciation for having me, Nandi.
I mean, we really appreciate you coming. Today's topic is going to be really interesting. The show title is "Blockchain That Actually Works: The Financial Use Cases No One Talks About." So, before we get into the show, and I'm going to formally introduce Jeff and read his extensive bio, let's just do some housekeeping. We are streaming live from LinkedIn and YouTube. Also, we are streaming live from our website, techbehindfintech.com. We also have another stream going from Instagram, but in Instagram you can only see me. If you want to see my guest, also go to techbehindfintech.com and you can watch both of us live. Now, without further ado, let me introduce my guest. Once again, the show title, Blockchain That Actually Works: The Financial Use Cases No One Talks About. Jeff Mahony is a seasoned technologist and systems architect with over 3 decades of experience building scalable, secure solutions at the intersection of financial services and technology. As a co-founder of RYT and an architect of the chain's patented proof of majority consensus mechanism, Jeff is driving efforts to integrate decentralized technologies and Web3 principles into government and enterprise systems, ensuring they remain robust while onboarding the next 1 billion users through nation-level pilots on RIT. Jeff's career has been rooted in advancing technology to solve complex problems in financial ecosystems. In 1999, he co-founded Save Daily Holdings, a fintech platform that pioneered accessible and scalable financial solutions long before blockchain and decentralized finance entered the financial mainstream. Prior to Save Daily, Jeff led the Jetta Group, where he worked with financial firms on internet strategy during the early wave of digital transformation. His contributions at TRW Space and defense sector and smart technologies included developing predictive algorithms and modeling tools, early examples of data-driven decision-making that resonate with today's AI-powered and decentralized systems. Jeff brings a systems-oriented perspective to technology design, emphasizing the importance of scalability, security, and transparency in alignment with the evolving digital economy. Jeff holds a cognitive science degree from UCLA. Wow, Jeff, what an extensive and wonderful career, my friend. I love it.
Well, I appreciate you bringing back all those memories, especially the ones of school and all the hard work.
Oh, I love it, man. Hey, 1999, that was like the year before like Y2K and Save Daily. Not on the same topic, but describe that time. Describe what you were doing there, man.
It was an amazing time. I think there were so many opportunities that were coming to the forefront. Most would ultimately end up failing, but there was such a number of unicorns that everybody thought they were going to be the next. You saw the internet bubble shortly after that. You saw a lot of what we called robo-advisors at the time. You know, we have the acorns of the world today, but that's actually the third wave of robo-advisors. In 1999, you saw the first wave of robo-advisors. They had groups called Beans and Gold K and all kinds of groups out there that were doing essentially the same things as Acorn is doing today. So it's been interesting to me because I've been around long enough to see these cycles repeat. And I'm seeing the 1999 recycles repeat again, and some of the earlier ones as well. So it's been fascinating for me because I've always heard that they repeat, but to see it in action and to have the remembrance in real time, and then to see it again happen, it's been fascinating to me, particularly when you're talking about the mistakes that keep being made over and over and over again.
I love that concept. I in 1999, taking it back there, I'm a year out of college, 2 years away from starting my job at a consultant at JP Morgan. I was in '01. So I was just like 2 years away from jumping into the financial technology system. I was totally blown away by the dot com. I think the next year I would work at a startup that went totally bust. They were doing something with marketing. So it's interesting to go down memory lane in
All
terms,
right.
but we like just living through that because came in '94, freshman year, computer science major, decided to go that route. So during that time, it was definitely interesting. Hey, I'm getting a lot of comments. Let's go. Look, I love this comment right here. Jeff Mahony is one of the smartest guys I know. Even his NEFT vodka is smart. New emerging fintech. Hey, what's the what is that? Talk to me about that.
Nef Vodka. So Nef Vodka was one of our portfolio companies from our family office. We were fortunate enough to work in 1999 and create this company called Save Daily. Its purpose was to bring investment services to what I like to call the other 93% of America. The folks that weren't being the folks that were unbanked or potentially having some challenges on the financial services side because they weren't being offered high net worth type products. I grew up as a very poor person in a sort of slum area. Broken family, the whole sort of story of origin that we all share. But it really prodded me to sort of focus on those folks that didn't get those services, like I didn't get, like my mother didn't get, my siblings didn't get. So we worked really hard to do that, and we had some great success with over 7,000 banking operations around the world. As such, we've been able to parlay some of those returns into some fun things outside the fintech space. Nef Vodka is one of those. Nef Vodka currently operates in 22 countries. We have a 2-ingredient vodka out there. It's the cleanest vodka on the market, designed for sipping, and I'm just having a great time building that into a global enterprise as well.
Totally off topic. I love it. I love the story. I on a personal side, I haven't had a drink in about 3 years. It's been it just I stopped, and I went through my periods of having different favorites from cognac to vodka to tequila, but no, man, I totally love it. I respect it.
Well, and I respect where you're at. I have to admit that even though we're running a vodka company, I rarely drink spirits. When I do, it is only vodka and only neat.
I love it. We have we have another comment here. Happy Halloween, good gents. Hey, Kevin, one of the guys who watch it. Okay, we have the same comment. One of the yeah, I really like the backstory and turning things around.
Well,
So
it's the backstory for me on everything, actually, if I might, Nandi, is the broken family. I don't present Mexican, I present white, but my mother was a 5 foot tall Mayan that came from Central America. We had some serious challenges growing up. Our father left when I was 9, and in a sort of traditional Spanish family, if you will, the firstborn is responsible for solving the problems. So at 9 years old, I went to work. I became anything from janitor to paper boy to person who mixed concrete. I've done everything you can imagine. I've done the endless number of holes in the ground for sprinkler systems, whatever it might be. But what it really did was put and instill this idea that I need to help those people. That somehow I need to fix that. I can't fix broken marriages, but I can at least create an opportunity financially for folks. And so what I realized as I was growing up was talent is equally distributed around the world. It doesn't matter your ethnic background, your your socioeconomic standing, none of that matters, but opportunity is not. So I wanted to create an equalization of opportunity. This may not be politically correct. I don't want to create an equalization of outcome. I want to create an equalization of opportunity. What you do with that opportunity is really up to you from my personal perspective. And so everything I build is about an equalization of opportunity. Even Nefty, the vodka, it sounds like it's a commodity-based product company, and it is. Having said that, it's got a foundational arm to it that is designed to help emerging artists, to help with literacy, to help women and children fight the various sort of plagues that they endure. It's all designed to actually create a money flow so that we can help at least portions of our society and portions of our community. And that's been sort of a premise for me, Mamdi, is I believe there's only one community on this planet. We may have pieces in there that we all need to pay attention to at that particular moment or at another moment, whatever it might be. But if I think about the world as one community, then it doesn't matter whom I'm serving. And it doesn't matter what I'm trying to do, as long as I'm trying to provide opportunities for the entire community. And so that drives not just Avaka, but to come back to today's topic, the blockchain. Right, my goal here is to make sure that people can actually participate in financial services on the ground. And I don't mean buying Bitcoin or buying Ethereum or buying something like that and hoping for a return. I mean real world solutions. Like, what can I do in those communities that have the savings circle? There's lots of groups out there that sort of coalesce, and they bring their family together and they all contribute to a pot, if you will, a bucket of money. And they have no mechanism for managing those things. When we talk about like South Africa, for example, they call it a stokvel. There are about 800,000 stokvels out there that need some support, because right now the mechanism for managing a stokvel includes generally a 40% take by somebody who's managing it. We should be able to do that for free. Those people should be able to save and gather that money and keep all of that. And that's the basis of our blockchain, was how do we solve these types of real world problems? And then how do we inject, based on our knowledge of the banking industry, into real world utility? So I'll stop there, Namdi. I don't want to run on a tirade, but it's very exciting things for me.
Listen, tirades are good. This is a conversation. I have you here for like an hour. We're gonna get into all the things. But you touched on something that I want to drill in. You said, I want to create opportunity, not necessarily outcome. Like, that's powerful. But I don't want to just breeze over that. I want to circle back there, because I think it ties back into the work you're doing at RIT and the blockchain use cases. So let's talk about that. Just what exactly do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is I think there should be essentially an equal playing field. Now, what you do on that playing field, that's up to you. But everybody doesn't get to enter that playing field. There are some folks that get to enter a playing field and others that don't. So as it relates to fintech and financial services, I'm referring back to that 93% of America that was unserved. In the 1999 timeframe, for example, most of these big financial services firms, Dean Witters and Merrill Lynch's, et cetera, were really only servicing the top 7% of America. And all they did was fight for that 7%. So they didn't expand their services into a bigger demographic. What they did is they just worked to steal customers from the other big player. Financial services were built around that. We call them high net worth services. Things like institutional grade mutual funds and equities and those types of investments that at that time were not available to anybody else, simply because they didn't meet the minimums. So when you had a Dean Witter account, for example, they wouldn't take you unless you had $250,000 in investable assets. There's actually some math behind that as to why they arrived at that number. It wasn't to exclude a demographic. It's just that their systems couldn't handle anything in terms of a smaller minimum. So I wanted to come to the table with a no minimum product. And so we created Save Daily with the idea that there should be an unlimited trading capability, no transaction fee, and no minimum. And now any player could get into the mix. And one of my favorite stories was this elderly gentleman from the east of the United States. And he would send in a $25 check every week. Now, we had millions of clients at that time. And then one week, he didn't send his $25 check in. And he had been building his account over time. And it bubbled up to me. Our customer support staff, everybody who was involved said, "What's happening? Mr. Twitter did not give us his check." So we sent a team to go visit this elderly Black gentleman. And he expressed to us, "Oh, I'm so sorry. It was my daughter's wedding and I had to, or my granddaughter's wedding, and I wanted to give her a gift. So I diverted that $25 to her." But it was such a success story because when he ultimately had to start taking distributions and the beneficiaries took advantage of that, he had about $12,700 in his account. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but this is a gentleman who never had more than $25 at a time. And we were able to produce a solution for him that would take his $25, that gave him an investment opportunity that he didn't have before. But more importantly, because there was no commission or transaction charge, his $25 gave him $25 worth of shares, not $25 minus a commission worth of shares. And when you're talking at that time, E-Trade was coming up and some of these bigger firms were coming up. And they were charging a $20 commission, which sounded amazingly low. Having said that, if I charged Mr. Twitter $20 on his $25, he would have had $5 invested in the market. Now think about that. He would have been so far upside down in the market, he would never have recovered. It would have been a pointless action on his part to do that. So we created technologies that actually allowed him to pay his $25. And that's the other 90% of America, as I refer to it. And so we've taken that same philosophical approach to everything that we do since that day. Because I get, and this is an odd part of the dialogue, I think, is I get a personal joy out of that. Right? I couldn't help my mother. I couldn't help my siblings. You know, we had to put water in our cereal to watch the bugs float up before we ate it. And it was something that I never wanted anybody else to really experience. And so we've worked very, very hard. And I have huge teams around me that share that philosophical approach. And they build these programs. I have a gentleman named Paul Robinson that works with us. And I asked him one day, I said, "Is there something we can do for emerging artists, maybe filmmakers in Ethiopia, this kind of thing?" And he said, "Say no more." And 3 years later, we have this program that's in front of the film festivals, Cannes and Durban, and all over the world. Is a great success, really bringing these emerging filmmakers to the table. We fund their operation in terms of their first films. We bring Oscar-winning directors and actors to the table to help them sort of understand what they're doing and maybe push them along and maybe even make introductions for them. And so we're creating opportunity, to your original question, but they had to make the great film. It wasn't us that made it for them, right? We gave them the opportunity, we gave them the money, we gave them the platform, and we gave them the help from the experts. And then they had to do something with it. And we've seen some great successes out of that. And many of those young filmmakers in the past few years are now helping the new filmmakers in our shows. It's really quite joyful for me to come back to that word and see that happen. But it's not just me. It takes people like Paul Robinson and other folks to actually put these things together. We have to present that platform and that philosophical approach. That's what we're doing at the right blockchain as well. It is the same tactic that we had in 1999. Is how do we service those folks that have a real need that aren't playing in the market? So I looked at that and I said, I've got MoneyGram, I've got all these traditional money movement systems, even though electronic and they're cross-border. I have some individual who might be working in another country apart from his or her family who is trying to send a few dollars back. They gather $1,000, which would be a huge amount in most countries, especially those that are emerging in nature. And then MoneyGram takes 150 of it. And mind-boggling to me because we've been in the money movement solutions since 1999. I know on the ACH backbones, for example, in the United States, I can move an almost unlimited amount of money in an unlimited number of transactions for less than a half a penny per transaction. And when I look at teller machines and I see those fees for withdrawing money at $2.50, or I'm out of network, so it's $3, it costs them a half a penny to move it. That's pure profit for them. It's pure profit for MoneyGram. And that upsets me at a level that's so low and deep that we had to change things dramatically. So we see some players out there, these money remittance systems, and I'm excited to see them do some real work. But even they are charging fees that they shouldn't be charging because this could be a frictionless environment if you had no gas or you had no fees on the blockchain that are being used there. So Right is actually positioned to not only be a low energy network solution, a small footprint, but a no gas solution. And it's designed specifically for those people's usage.
No, that's you know what? Let's get a baseline, because I know the terms of the gas, using the cost to do these transactions and so forth. But to help the audience, let's start from the beginning, right? How would you define a blockchain?
Its most basic form, it's going to be a distributed ledger. We all use that word, but what that really means is if I put a transaction or a record into a traditional database like a SQL server from Microsoft, I'm going to have one copy of it, and it's going to sit essentially in a clustered database configuration. So think about one big, giant, powerful machine. In a blockchain, I'm going to take that same record and I'm going to distribute it across 10,000 different machines, completely unrelated except through the nodes that are, quote, blockchain. And so what I have is I have a copy 10,000 times. And now that makes it immutable because I can walk back into a SQL server and change that record almost instantly or anytime in the future. And though there's a log, I'm able to actually make a change that might affect your bank account. So part of the benefit, if you will, to this immutability and this distribution of those records is something that happened to one of my female mentees. She said, I balanced my check account and it looks like the bank took $67 from me. And I said, well, let's call the bank. She said, well, I already did. Of course, she's astute. And she said, the bank doesn't agree with me. And I said, that's unfortunate because they're the last word. You're not going to go anywhere from there. So you just lost $67. On a blockchain, if that happened, you could get 10,000 of your friends to say, no, 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 bank, you did take the $67 and we want it back. And that's the fundamental difference is banks and other institutions can no longer be a black box. They can't be the last word. A blockchain and a distributed ledger where there are copies all over the place that others can see gives you that transparency and the immutability and the bandwidth and backing to say to a banking operation, no, you ripped me off.
Would you agree that an analogy we can use, real simple analogy, because most people use Google, like a Google sheet that millions have access to, and we're seeing all of the changes in real time, and we can track changes and say, wait, who did this, who did that, and we all have access to it, right? And you're seeing that those changes in the same sheet. So if someone goes, oh no, I didn't do that. Oh no, buddy, it's in the history. You did. Would
Yeah.
you say that that's an analogy we can use to describe the blockchain?
It is a great analogy. I'll add one component to that. No one can mess with that version. It can't be changed. So there isn't a tech person alive that could fake the past. There is in all database structures currently used by most institutions. You get the right person, they can go in and rewrite the past easily within seconds, microseconds even. You can't do that in this distributed ledger. So in your Google Sheet example, the fundamental add that I would make is that version that occurred in history can't be changed.
The next thing that we use in blockchain, because I know you have a patent on one of these things, can you help the audience describe what is consensus? And
Yes.
in this same example, how is that being used?
So in that same example, so let's take the Google Sheet. I have 20 people that have come together and said, I agree that that entry that you made is correct. Not that you just made the entry, but that it's actually correct. And that's the fundamental difference when you talk about a consensus model. How do you arrive at that consensus? In a democratized solution, which we all promote in the blockchain space, it should be everyone who is agreeing that this is, or at least a majority of everyone is agreeing that this is. And this is the shift that we're making at Right, is with a proof of majority, a new consensus model, the preponderance of the nodes, those 10,000 places where we put that data, they have to agree that this is the correct data. Once they all agree, or at least the majority of them agree, then it gets put into that Google Sheet. When you look at a Bitcoin or an Ethereum, there might be 10,000 nodes out there, but because they're a proof of work or even a proof of stake, you only need a few people to say this. And in fact, inside of the Bitcoin network, you only need one to say this. And so though they say they're a democratic solution, I actually at any given moment in quote an epic, I need only one node who won the workload to say that this is the correct version. So to give you the simplest idea of this is in your Google Sheet, whoever was perceived in that office to have done the most work that day is the one that gets to decide what's the truth in that Google Sheet. We're saying at proof of majority, no, that doesn't matter. Everyone in the office should have a say in this. And as long as we have a majority of those office workers saying that that is the truth, then it goes into the Google Sheet.
Simple question, right? How do people vote on what's the truth? If they're offline, they can't vote. Like, how does that work in proof of majority?
Well, so the offline is something that blockchains cannot accommodate today. So if you're offline, if you didn't show up at the office that day, you can't vote on what's true in the Google Sheet. Okay. But what you want to do is you want to make sure that the entirety of that office, or in this case, the network that is online, actually has a vote in this. So the first thing you have to do is distribute the record, the request, the thing that we're trying to decide is true or not to everyone in the network. And so if there are 10,000 nodes, all 10,000 of them have to get a copy of this transaction or record that we're trying to, quote, validate. Now they have a certain amount of time to validate that against their internal records. So they've on this distributed ledger, they have a copy. Everybody has their own copy of this record set. So in effect, they actually have a copy of that Google Sheet. They then privately go through that Google Sheet, as it were, and see whether or not they think this new record should go in as a truth. And if they think it should, then they go back to everyone else in the network and they say, I think this is true. And if enough of those people, or nodes in this case, say, I think this is true, then everybody puts it in their distributed ledger. Then everybody says and essentially initials that record in the Google Sheet.
So in the case that we're talking about, this example of 10,000, in proof of majority, when it gets to 5,001, does it automatically get put in? Or like, well, how does it determine that majority?
Yeah, so that majority is set by parameters that are running that network. In its simplest form, yeah, it would be 5,001. Would say, yes, we agree on this. And so then we're taking this as our new truth network-wide. So even if you didn't agree, this is still your new truth because the rest of us did agree.
Any an interesting question, because it blockchain revolves around this word called trust.
Mhm.
Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Because you've been in the game for a while, how has that word changed over the years? I like this pinpoint. We're going back to 1999, like a Prince song, right? So let's just start from 1999. How has that word evolved for you in technology and everything that you're doing?
Well, so I think what people, when they use the word trust with regard to a blockchain, what they're really saying is that we believe that a truth has been arrived at and it's been put into the record and it cannot be changed. However, truth to me starts earlier than that. And the truth is where does these nodes or these voters, how do I know that they're acting properly? That they didn't skew the vote and create their own version of the truth that we then later accepted. So, from a technology standpoint, again, as I mentioned before, any good coder can come in and rewrite history in a SQL database really easily. And so we take precautions, we harden systems, and we put firewalls, and we do various sort of gates, if you will, that we put up, and we hope that they never actually get to the database. Because if they do, then it's unfeathered, they can do whatever they'd like. The blockchain is a bit different because even if you have access to it, which in fact is a tenet of blockchain that we give everyone access to it, you can't change that. But you could sway the initial voters. And so we'll generally call those bad actors. So let's say that a big portion of our network were bad actors and they are lying and they decided to create a new truth. And if enough of them get together, then you have a falsehood that's accepted as a truth into our blockchain. The trust has been broken, but no one knows it. Okay, so you have to mitigate those risks. We call that attack vectoring management. And what are the different types of attacks that can actually occur in a blockchain? There are many different types of attacks that can occur. And I won't go through all of them, but you can mitigate those with the proper solutions there. Your challenge is how do I create throughput speed? How do I create immutability? And how do I manage attack vectoring? And how do I create low network energy usage all at the same time? Right? So how do I quickly determine that someone is a bad actor? Well, turns out there are ways to do this that most blockchains don't leverage. I come from aerospace, so jumping back to 1999 in cognitive science, some of the things that I was brought in to do early on at TOW Space and Defense was manage the forward area air defense systems. And forward area air defense systems included Star Wars, which was Reagan's initiative for missile combat. So any kind of inbound missiles, ICBM, et cetera, nuclear weapons, we have a system that's actually designed to deter that. Has a problem though. At that time, it had a problem of determining whether or not the what we call brilliant pebbles could release. So I'll give you the shortest version of this. As a missile comes in, these brilliant pebbles that have lasers on them will swarm that missile and destroy that missile. The problem was that that missile, because of inertia, even though it was broken apart, still kept going. It was disabled, but still kept going. The brilliant pebbles would not release. They didn't think it was destroyed. So I know this sounds completely unrelated to blockchain. The way I solved that was to say that periodically I'm going to not have brilliant pebbles chase a missile. I'm not going to allow them to do this. And those that are chasing a missile, I'm going to make them release prematurely and go chase another missile. So you're using a statistical means of figuring out the optimal usage of those brilliant pebbles versus the destruction that we're trying to achieve. Bring that down to bad actors in my network. So what proof of majority will do is it will say that you are a good actor. You've been doing everything right. You're one of our peers. It seems like you always get the right answer. You're on time. I'm going to sit you down anyway. I'm not going to let you show up in the voting. And then when somebody's doing something odd, we're going to eliminate them from the voting, but we're not going to tell them. We never tell them that they've been eliminated from the voting, so they continue their path. Now, if you harken back to all the mafia movies that we've ever seen, you're going to see the exact same thing. I know you're my best soldier, but you're not coming tonight to this gig. Have some spaghetti, right? Or when they know somebody is acting badly, do they tell them? No, they keep watching, they keep playing them, they keep letting them come to these gigs. They just take a different tactic with them. Eventually, they eliminate the bad actor, as we've seen in these mafia movies. We'll do the same. We'll give you a chance to come back into the network and be a good participant. And the reason that we do that is so that we can have a self-healing network, because that was also an attack vector. Just make us think that everybody's a bad actor and we'll get rid of our entire network. Just make the mafia leader think all of his soldiers are bad and he'll get rid of his entire team. Right? So we don't want that to happen either. So there's this balancing act that we play. And one of the ways to do that is to say, you're not eliminated from the network. You just don't get to play for 100 epics. We're going to sit you on the sideline, but we're not going to tell you why. We're never going to tell you why. So, because if I told you, I think you're a bad actor, you might change your tactic. Right? So I need to be really playing this out. And there's obviously some significant math behind this, but these are the math structures that were born out of my days in aerospace that you don't see in attack vector management here in the blockchain space today. So proof of majority is unique in that way.
Wow. That is really, really interesting. So, because it's terms like zero trust that we use. I'm just trying to like wrap my head around the way you work. I'm gonna say a couple of things. Just help me out here with your security mechanism. So you have a bad actor, you monitor them. You don't eliminate them immediately from the network. There must have been things that they exhibited that made you believe that they're a bad actor, right?
Mhm.
All right, so we're not going to get into those things, but let's say so they certain actions led you to believe, okay, we have to monitor this person. You don't eliminate them from the network. You watch them. They think everything is normal. They're still voting. They're still doing their everyday stuff. You're just not factoring their vote into the consensus at all, right?
Correct.
Now you get to the point where you have to inform them, because that's the self-healing aspect, right? So how does that work? How do you then inform them, listen, we've been monitoring you, you've been doing things, and I can tell you what you've been doing, but we know you've been doing things. You know, and I know that you're doing things. We're not going to get into details about that, but stop. Is that a simplified version of what happens? Like what that's what I
Yeah,
want.
it really is, but there's sort of two nuances to that, because sometimes bad actors aren't actually bad actors. They're just making mistakes. And they might be being fed wrong information from somebody. So Think about a bad agent from the, I don't know, KGB who's trying to corrupt a CIA agent by feeding them bad information. That CIA agent isn't corrupt. They're just acting ineptly because they don't understand the information that's given to them is erroneous. So I don't want to eliminate my CIA agent. I want him or her to stay in my network. So I'm going to give her a chance. I'm going to say, you're acting in a bad way. We're going to let you continue to operate in this network after a certain amount of time sitting on the bench. Once you come back into the network, please act properly or we'll eliminate you permanently. And so it gives a semblance of self-healing that prevents what other chains have, which is called forking. They'll actually fork out two different networks that have two different understandings of what the truth is. That doesn't happen in a proof of majority network because we will let you come back in and we will self-heal our network and we'll give you what is the correct version of that blockchain. There is no forking that goes on. Because there has to be an understanding that a bad actor isn't always a bad actor. They might just have been corrupted by a third party. And then again, there is the true bad actor. Either way, they'll eventually get eliminated from the network. So because they're being ignored, although treated as if they're not being ignored, we have an opportunity to watch them for an extended period. They're continuing to act badly. Eventually, we'll just eliminate them. But in the interim, they've hurt the network, and by no means. They haven't actually hurt the network. That one who happened to be corrupted for a moment will automatically adjust once they're not being fed bad data anymore, and will be a participating node in our network and helping to arrive at that truth. So that's the self-healing aspect of this. So we have to make sure that we're differentiating between bad actors and temporarily corrupted actors. And a temporarily corrupted actor should be let back into the network.
What inspired you for your proof of majority consensus model? Like, where did it derive from?
Well, so I wanted a real majority. So to come back again to this equal opportunities concept, equal opportunity to me means in the mainstream, it means literacy. You should be able to read and understand. Don't take CNN's word for it. Don't take Fox's word for it. Go look it up yourself. There's a certain amount of literacy that has to go with that opportunity. And so everything that I do is really revolving around that opportunity. To me, the extension of literacy is now a vote. So if we're going to have an actual democracy in our blockchain, then everyone should participate. That doesn't happen in any other blockchains. Okay. So proof of majority is designed specifically so everyone can actually participate. Again, an equalization of opportunity. It's just another version of an equalization of opportunity for me. Having said that, if I'm not waiting on this proof of work or this proof of stake, proof of work, did I do enough work? Was I the hardest worker in the office that day? I get to vote. Or did I pay enough money to be that guy who gets to vote? Neither one of those is equal opportunity to me. So those go right out the door as far as I'm concerned. They also happen to create high network energy in any blockchain. In other words, the amount of energy required to come to the truth is very, very high. And I can't have that in our network. I need to have something that has very, very low energy. Again, that philosophical approach to opportunity. Just because you or I or someone else may not have the means financially to take advantage of an opportunity should not prevent them from having that opportunity. In the same way, just because you don't have enough energy to be the big voter should not prevent you from voting. So Wright had to reshift that philosophical approach that other blockchains take and say, no, I want everyone to vote. But in order for that to happen, I need to have low network energy. I need to have a small footprint so that they can actually fit on a cell phone because they may not have a $20 million rig or a $100,000 rig at their house, right? They can't make those things happen. So what's equal opportunity? The phone is equal opportunity, at least in our current world. So we had to present and redesign the solutions to work in that way. But namely, they also have to work with the banking industry if you want real world utility. And real world utility means 100 milliseconds or less. A bank wants to be able to put its transaction onto a network, go back and verify it, and make sure that it's on that network in less than 100 milliseconds. So you can't have a 10-minute epic that Bitcoin has. You have to actually have a very short, small epic. So these things have to work fast as well. You're back to a light footprint. But then you need to have something else there. You need to actually be able to make sure that everything is validated in that time frame, not with a layer 2 chain, but a layer 1, not some side chain that does this. It has to all happen inside this network super fast so the banks can manage it, so that you have a light footprint and you can have it so that your opportunity is extended. Has to mitigate risk, those bad actors, etc. Has to be inclusive so that it's self-healing from the perspective that everybody gets to vote. But you have to also create a mechanism where it can be trusted by those third parties like the big banking operations. You also have throughput issues. So let me give you an example. Visa and MasterCard, worldwide networks, the little swipe, 2,700 transactions a second is what is required to actually run a Visa network on a worldwide basis. When the banks are working with you, they expect you in the 100 millisecond or less range so that they can get that throughput. You have a 10-minute epic out of Bitcoin. So if you were to use Bitcoin as a layer 1 and you went to Walmart and you swiped your card, do you think that cashier is going to wait for 10 minutes for it? No, they're not. They wait 100 milliseconds. That's what Visa does. Bitcoin's current transaction speeds are about four transactions a second, not even close to 2,700 transactions a second. So the current blockchain models out there without layer 2 additions to them cannot work fast enough to actually manifest a real world utility like a card swipe. So we had to add that into our mix as well. So on a T2 medium grade machine, which is basically a laptop, we can run 4,000 transactions a second. We put these on the types of mainframes that governments use, the types of mini computers that corporations use. You're in the 400,000 and 500,000 transactions a second range with proof of majority. More than enough processing power in a small footprint network running on a cell phone to actually manage the card swipe that will make the banks happy, and the merchants will allow you to use those types of coins in their transaction systems. So it's a different world that you have to create than what we have in the current blockchain community.
Can we get into use cases that others may not be as familiar with that's happening right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're deploying in Pakistan right now a national ID system. We're deploying in one of the neighboring companies a visa management system for travel. We're also deploying an app called Committee, which is that savings circle. There are about 104 million Pakistan people who use savings circles every day that are losing 40% of their money. They should lose zero. They'll be able to do that with us. We're cleared with the SEC Pakistan in order to deploy all those things, and they're already in deployment. That's an example. In Costa Rica, we're actually at the government level doing a national ID system, as well as managing education, security, and health, and making sure that these citizens of that country are getting access to those services without the corrupting middle piece. So, for example, Costa Rica is losing about $30 billion a year in misplaced weapons, cars, trucks, and uniforms from their police force. They're missing in the order of billions in terms of fake usage of their health system, and they're losing an undescribed amount of money at this point when they are looking at educational loss. In other words, people are faking degrees. They have all kinds of things that are happening inside their society that can be removed by removing the intermediary who is creating that opportunity. And thus, we're removing corruption in those countries. And that's our mandate from the president there, et cetera, is to do that work for them. To remove corruption, you need to remove intermediaries, typically. Blockchains in general, not just proof of majority, are designed to remove intermediaries. And so it's a great example of their use. In Panama, we're also doing a national ID system. And for them, we're doing a title management system for all of their real estate. It turns out real estate deeds are being faked all over the place. Properties are being sold 2, 3, 10 times. Nobody knows who owns what, and nobody has a right to it, even though they've paid, and they have no recourse in the court systems in order to prove who was first. They're also faking environmental studies that say, hey, this land is suitable for building, and it's not, or the reverse. And so there's all kinds of areas where we have real use cases. When you come back to the South African continent, South Africa is part of the African continent, we talked about the Stockfells earlier in the conversation. Those are also savings circles. So these are people putting real money in who are getting 60 cents on their dollar back instead of $1 on their dollar back. We don't want that to happen anymore. We want these folks to be able to save. And again, it's that opportunity. They have no opportunity to be banked. So they create these saving circles, and again, it's called a Stockfeld there, but they're losing money on it. That should not happen. They're losing 40% of their assets simply because they can't get to a bank. Someone's taking advantage of them. I have a word for that. That's called corruption. And so we need to replace that. Those are some use cases that we have currently in deployment. Others we're in conversation.
A few questions. I know we're almost at time, but it's like you're definitely a guest that I would like to bring on again and dive deeper into these topics, because you're just a wealth of information in regards. You're doing some really interesting things. A few things. Number one, how does the ID system work with the blockchain? Number two, the saving circle, is that only for a circle of like family members or people you know, and they all put money into this? And number three, I heard someone in real estate's one of my passion in terms of properties and things like that. But I heard that somebody was saying in the next 10 years, you're going to start seeing all title stuff in the US on the blockchain. That was a prediction. So I just threw those three things out on you. I'm going to keep quiet and listen to you talk about them.
Well, let's start with number one. So the national ID systems, obviously, this is a KYC issue. First, you need to validate who that person is. You need to bring them onto the blockchain, and then you need to allow various agencies to ping that blockchain to verify that that person who's standing in front of them actually has a valid ID. Typically, that's in hard form. It's also in digital form. The United States, for example, you saw under Doge, we were paying something like 12 million Social Security payments to people who were dead, right? That can't happen. That's a tremendous amount of money going out the door. I think we had 4 or 5 people that were over 300 years old that were being paid. I mean, the ridiculousness of that is something that I think anybody can absorb. So you need to eliminate that. When you talk about Costa Rica, for example, there are only 5.6 million people, whereas Pakistan's about 260 million people. The errors in the system in Costa Rica are not as egregious in terms of their impact as the same error in Pakistan with a significantly larger population. So, examples of this. I need to be able to verify an individual who's coming to get health services. In Costa Rica, they're socialized. In Pakistan, they have access to certain dollar amounts from governmental loans, etc. And if I can't verify that this person is real and not dead or not fake, if I can't verify that they came already and haven't come twice for the same medical service using somebody else's ID, I don't really have any way to stop this extraneous spend. So on a blockchain, I'm going to take something that we'll call the KYC side and a validation of facial, voice, fingerprint, a variety of different techniques that we can use collectively to ensure a person is who they say they are. That's then stored on the blockchain. That then gives them what we'd expect, some kind of identifier. In the United States, it's a social security number. Other countries have something analogous to that. Then they have to come back when they want to validate again, because they're using a service now at the governmental level, and show us those things. And they have to match the origination that we have in our immutable blockchain. A blockchain didn't change. No one can corrupt that. You can't go back in and make a fake identity. You can't do Mission Impossible and throw some fake person into this mix. It doesn't happen that way when you're using a blockchain. I can't corrupt a database like I can in the movies and what's done in real life if it's on the blockchain. So that's your basic premise. Now from there, I can launch and validate all of the services. So we talk about real estate, for example, your passion. I'm going to validate title and the path of that title, right? The transfer from origination, when it was first built, or whenever the land was acquired, or whenever it was lotted or put aside into a parcel, etc. But who owns it as we go through this path? Well, that should reflect back to that immutable person on the blockchain. We know that Jane Doe owns this thing. She owned it from this year to this year. There's no question it can't be faked. It can't be changed. And now I have 7 people claiming ownership. No, it's Jane Doe. And so we have this opportunity, if you will, in front of us with the blockchain to validate real time. And so it really does come down, and I do want to repeat this part. People, where we see corruption is people who are no longer alive, pretending to be alive. Somebody else has obviously taken their identity. People who have never been validated ever. We don't know who they are. But we have the DMV in the United States, for example. You go in, you take a picture, you give a thumbprint. We have every opportunity to collect that information about you that would validate you. We don't use it in any standard format, really anywhere. I don't know that you didn't come and double dip. You didn't come to get services twice because you walked into the office, got services, and then you gave it to your cousin who looks like you, and they got services. Okay, so what you're doing is eliminating those opportunities. When you have socialized medicine in Costa Rica, everybody gets it. Why do I have to have foreigners that aren't entitled to that come in and take those services simply because they look like somebody who lives there? That shouldn't be allowed. There should be other ways to validate that person. In a country with the small population like Costa Rica, that's impactful. In the United States and in places like Pakistan, you might be able to hide that a little bit. You might not notice the loss of money because somebody who isn't a citizen is actually using services under the pretense of an actual citizen. But over time, you'll notice that. And over time, you'll start to see huge loss. If in Costa Rica it's 30 billion in losses for use of technology, just imagine what it is in a giant country. These are huge amounts of money that are being lost. And it all could be circumvented with an ID system that is at the core. So we like to start with the core ID system, and then we branch out into other areas of that government to help reduce the corruption wherever it is that they see is the next sort of step. Where do they want to reduce that corruption? And again, as I mentioned in Costa Rica, this $30 billion loss of arms, I mean, weapons, cars, trucks, and police uniforms. Think about that. Think about how many police officers are in Costa Rica that are not real.
You know, we this is a great conversation, and I know we're at the hour. I do want to extend and ask one question. You have people that associate crypto with blockchain. They go, oh, I got scammed, it didn't work. And I want you to answer this, right? For people who are skeptical, right, about the blockchain, what do you hope that they can understand about the real world potential of this technology?
I think two pieces to that. Let's sort of talk to the crypto versus blockchain. All banking operations have some kind of database layer. They maintain their data in some piece of hardware. Okay, you maintain your Google Sheet on your hard drive in your computer. That's just the storage, and the blockchain is the storage. What you do with that Google Sheet or what the bank does with your money, that's completely separate. It just so happens they're using this data warehouse that they call a SQL server, or we're calling a blockchain. So a financial coin, like a cryptocurrency, is in and of itself completely different than the blockchain that it's using. Blockchain is just the data warehousing mechanism. What's happening in the open market with that cryptocurrency is completely separated and devoid of any blockchain issues. So if you've lost money in the cryptocurrency markets, it's because you got scammed by a person, not because you got scammed by a blockchain. And so that's the cornerstone there. When you're talking about how can I work this into the real world setting, value and data are things that can be kept on a blockchain. So an understanding of how much money you have, but also an understanding of what your last colonoscopy looked like. And now you can bridge into a real world setting where I can separate the blockchain completely from value and into record sets that might be meaningful to me in medical setting. I don't know about you. Every time I go into the doctor, they ask me, when was your last appointment? What was the results of this? And like probably every other person on the planet, I don't know. I can't remember. I don't even remember the doctor's name, right? Much less where I was and the address and the phone number. I don't know any of those things, and I certainly don't have the results of that at my fingertips. But if I did, now I have a real world use that can be immediately valuable and didn't include any monetary piece to it. So I can 100% separate the cryptocurrency from the blockchain in that sense. So blockchain is your database that lets you do all kinds of different things. Its benefits, unlike our traditional databases, is mostly surrounding the area of immutability. It can't be faked. It can't be changed. You can't rewrite history. And so your records are your records. Your value is always the same. Anywhere else in the world, all database structures that we currently use can be changed. And so I can rewrite history.
I have one more question. This is more of a personal question for you, and this will be the last question. With everything you've done in technology over the last 3 decades, what will you want your legacy to be in regards to technology that future architects can carry forward?
I want for us to come back to real world requirements. I want us to actually, instead of building something that we think is good because our ego says it is, that we actually take a look at the real world needs, whether in this little region or worldwide or just in my own office. Build something that actually meets that need, remove your ego from it, put your best thinking hat on and actually build something that is relevant to the real world requirements. Stop building things that feel like they might be a hit, that might get it out of the park, that might put my name on the map. Build value. Your value will ultimately put your name on the map. If you're seeking to find that viral this or get my name out there, or I want to be a star, you're always going to create something subpar. And I'd rather see those real geniuses that are everywhere build something with regard to the actual requirements so that we as a society can benefit in a real meaningful way. That's my hope.
And that, my friend, is an awesome way to end today's show. So, listen, one of the things that we do for our guests, I'm going to get off stage and I'm going to give you some time to talk to the audience, how they can find you, what rights, website, different things like that. And then I'll come back when you're done.
Fantastic. Yeah, I definitely appreciate the time with Amdi. I appreciate the audience here. I think the goal that I've always had is to create an equalization of opportunity. I can't do it for everybody, but I can do it in small niches. Some of those small niches include the right blockchain, and that's at ryt.io. A little known fact, if you send an email to admin@right.io, it'll come to me. So it's my hope that we can have some interesting conversations on the side and build something, hopefully together, and through the inclusion of your amazing project that might use our blockchain, perhaps go through one of our quote unquote incubators, and we can help you produce something amazing that you've had in your mind for a long time. There's got to be ways that we can interoperate together to fulfill that initial need, as I see it, of meeting real world requirements. Thanks, everybody.
That's great. I put the website right below me, guys. So it's part of this video forever. I also put it in the comments. Jeff, want to thank you very much for your time today. Also want to say to our guests, the show sponsored by Sweating Equity. That's another one of our shows that has not premiered yet, but will be premiering hopefully in 2026. We always say Tech Behind FinTech is about a topic. We are educating our audience on a topic. Sweating Equity is about the guest. But here's the twist. We will be working out with the guest, doing one of our vigorous MMA workouts while we drill down and ask some questions about their journey, their path, and so forth. So we did do our pilot that has not been released yet. So that's Sweating Equity, the show sponsored by Sweating Equity. To everyone, I always say, whether you're watching the show live, we thank all our people that commented. LinkedIn user, I don't know your name, but Kevin Garland, definitely know you. Thank you for your comments. If you did not comment but viewed it, I see my people on Instagram here join. We thank you. We have people on LinkedIn who join. We appreciate all the messages I get in front of or behind the scenes, and appreciate your viewership. So we also have on Tech Behind FinTech a newsletter. So if you go to Tech Behind FinTech, I'll put the link there. You can subscribe to our free weekly newsletter, and you'll get information and on FinTech news and so forth. It's free, and you'll also get insight to our upcoming guests that'll be on the show. It's a weekly that goes out Monday. So go to Tech Behind FinTech /subscribe and drop your information. Jeff, listen, you're officially a friend of the show. Definitely, I like your call out during your what you were saying to the audience. If you have some interesting use cases, we are working on some projects. So, if anything comes up where we can leverage the blockchain, we'll definitely shoot you over an email. You're now one of my contacts. We're connected on LinkedIn, and we have each other's information. So definitely thank you for today. It was a great insight. I took a lot of jewels from there. I was really like, as you were talking, sometimes I was pretending I was in the audience. I was just like, let me listen. I'm gonna try to learn something as well. So thanks for that. And you're about to say something.
No, I was going to say, Namdi, I can't thank you enough for the opportunity to speak with some real world folks. I really enjoy the kind of crosstalk, the beer, as it were, right? What would I be talking about if I were sitting at a bar with somebody and having a friendly conversation? This is a great format. I really love it.
Now, I appreciate that. And what Jeff is talking about is something that I talked to my guest before the show, before we go live. I say, listen, our show is conversational. So pretend we're colleagues at a bar. I won't be drinking the beer, but I'll have a drink and we'll be a non-alcoholic beverage, and we'll be talking about what you do and how you do it. So I always encourage my guests to bring that type of energy, and it creates a different type of show, which you just witnessed today. So on that note, Jeff, you have a wonderful weekend in sunny Southern California, and I will do my best to do the same thing on the East Coast where it's a little bit nippy.
All right, enjoy, and happy Halloween, everyone.
Happy Halloween. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Understanding the technology that powers the money is essential. Knowing the business drivers that inspire how the money is made is crucial. Bridging the gap between the mind of the technologist and the mind of the business is monumental. That is what TBF is all about. Let's start this never-ending conversation. It's time.